Hi everyone, I'm Nick with Burnley & Trowbridge, and you're joining us today for a tutorial on 18th century open and closed worked buttonholes. Buttonholes may seem intimidating to a beginner, but they're not hard with some practice. 18th century buttonholes can be the type that's completely decorative without an opening, which is called a closed worked buttonhole, or they could be the type made with a functional opening, sometimes including an additional length of buttonhole stitches to make the buttonhole appear longer. Not to get too technical, but if it's fully open, it's called an open worked buttonhole, and if it's part open, part closed, it's called an open and closed worked buttonhole. The ends of both styles are reinforced with a small bar tack. The buttonhole stitch is the fundamental technique common to both styles. The only difference in how either style is made is whether or not one end is cut open to allow a button to pass through. In that case, the buttonhole stitches are simply worked over the cut edges of the fabric. A quick word on style. There's a lot of variation and change across the 18th century in terms of buttonhole lengths, styles, placement, and even the number of buttonholes. Look carefully at dated extant garments and contemporary pictures before deciding on what buttonholes are right for your project. The following are the basic steps for sewing an 18th century open and closed worked buttonhole. Buttonhole locations are first marked in chalk. On lighter fabrics, they might be outlined with a running stitch or a back stitch to help prevent distortion. A normal length for a buttonhole is 2 to 3 times the width of the button. The open part only needs to be big enough for your buttons to fit through comfortably. Do a test to make sure your buttons will fit through the cut opening. Cloth-covered buttons usually need a little more space to fit through without straining. I often add about 1/8 of an inch or more to the button width to get the length of the open portion. Next, baste around the buttonhole locations so that the inner fabric layers don't shift. Now cut your opening. One note on fabric. If the edges of the opening are unraveling and won't hold the stitch, the edge can be whip stitched to improve durability. You can also treat the cut edge with gum tragacanth or something similar, which is an 18th century solution to prevent unraveling. Just test it first because it might cause discoloration or wrinkling on your fabric. Before stitching, wax your buttonhole thread. Run it between your fingers or a cloth to wipe off the excess wax. To begin the buttonhole, make one or more long stitches along one side, the whole length of the buttonhole. Now, buttonhole stitches are worked along one side ending with a bar tack. Most 18th century buttonholes include a bar tack at both ends. The bar tack starts with a few short stitches across the end of the buttonhole. These are then covered with buttonhole stitches. Buttonholes were usually finished by pressing with an iron from behind using a special notched board into which the stitches are placed. This neatens the line of stitching and helps it properly stand out from the fabric. And there you have a finished buttonhole. Good buttonholes take practice, so don't feel discouraged if they aren't perfect right from the start. And they don't have to be absolutely perfect, just neat and functional. Take your time, practice, and you'll get there. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on open and closed worked buttonholes. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you find our videos helpful, and until the next time, happy sewing!